Hello everyone and welcome to another video review. On this episode I will be reviewing Jurassic World, directed by Colin Trevorrow. Before I jump into this review, I have to say that this is a spoiler-filled video. And the reason I'm doing that is because just to get as in-depth with this movie as possible, I have to go into the spoilery details. So if you haven't seen Jurassic World yet, now might be a good time to stop this video. Jurassic World takes place 22 years after the events of the first movie, and here we see a park that is finally open, functioning, taking in thousands of guests every day with numerous attractions with real live dinosaurs. Now, in my opinion, that should be enough to get your ass in the seat, but for better or worse, Jurassic World has a lot of things to say. And it's kind of complicated for me to talk about because I am such a huge fan of the first film, and this movie does not live up to that movie in any substantial way, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm a little torn over this one, you guys. The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 kind of play off as anthology films when you look back on them now, and Jurassic World is the first proper sequel to Jurassic Park. This was Spielberg's vision, so he went to handpick a director, and he chose Colin Trevorrow, who has only directed one other feature film before, called Safety Not Guaranteed. When I first heard that Colin Trevorrow was directing the next Jurassic Park sequel, I was surprised to say the least. Being that he's only directed one other feature film before, and it was an indie film, he's a risk. I think that's safe to say. But when you have directors like Brad Bird and Steven Spielberg backing you, you just have to trust the process and hope for the best. Now, going back to Spielberg's vision, whenever he first conceptualized this Jurassic Park sequel, he thought of three main themes that would work into the movie's main storyline. An open, working park that sees thousands of visitors every day, a guy who trains velociraptors, and a genetically modified dinosaur. Now, any sensible moviegoer hears those three things and thinks to themselves, you could probably make one movie out of each of those themes. But no, this is 2015. They have to make a movie about all of these things. It is mostly constructed in a feasible way here, with all the three storylines interconnecting. So within this now functioning park, we follow four main characters. Owen, played by Chris Pratt, Claire, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, and Zach and Gray Mitchell, played by Nick Robinson and Ty Simpkins, respectively. I'd like to start with Zach and Gray, because they are essentially the characters who introduce the audience to the world. They are the first human characters we see, but their storyline ranges from kind of unnecessary to essential to the process. There's a divorce subplot, which in my opinion should have been left on the writer's table, only mentioned in passing, because you look back to the original Jurassic Park and Lex and Tim's parents were getting divorced, but it was something that was mentioned in passing by side characters, but it did not lessen the relationship between John Hammond and his grandchildren. Now in Jurassic World, you have Bryce Dallas Howard playing Zach and Gray's Aunt Claire. And the divorce subplot does work in there because you kind of expect these kids to be looking to their Aunt Claire for a lot of entertainment and attention, but she doesn't give them a lot of that in the first part of the movie. So it's there that we feel the weight of the divorce subplot. But they also try and work in a sisterly connection between Claire and her sister, the boy's mom, played by Judy Greer. And as much as I appreciate Judy Greer as an actor, her character is also unnecessary. And then there's the fact that the movie apparently takes place during Christmas time. The boys are in the airport at the beginning of the movie with their parents, and you hear Christmas music playing over the intercom. But it is never mentioned again in the movie, like, hey, Merry Christmas, or, we're about to go home for the holidays. Never! It is just insipid, because you could tell that there was just an editor sitting in that bay being like, hey, the house is in the snow and it must be Christmas time. No, that house could have been in the Northeast during February, and that would have made more sense. Filmmakers, you need to know that music is an important part of the filmmaking process, even if it's in the background. Audiences pick up on that shit. And finally, the fact that Zach had raging hormones through the first half of this movie, where he just could not look at every single babe in the park. And I get it, I've been there before, and there is a little bit of conflict between Gray and Zach because he's jaded from his brother, he doesn't understand, he's not at that age yet, he also wants his brother to be paying more attention to him, but it is still weighty flab that doesn't need to be there. This is a movie about dinosaurs eating people. Stay on task. But when you strip all that stuff off from the side, Zach and Gray are characters who are essential to Jurassic World. They're seeing the park from the eye level, and they have some of the better sequences in this movie. The gyrosphere scenes, for example. When they're riding along in the fields with the dinosaurs, that was a lot of fun. And then when they go past the fence and they get in the skirmish between the Indominus Rex and the Ankylosauruses, that was terrifying. And then there's the scene where the boys find the old main building of the original Jurassic Park. That was one of the few moments of adventurous wonder and discovery that made the original Jurassic Park what it is today. And yeah, it was just a slice of it, but it worked for me. Moving on, I'd like to quickly talk about Chris Pratt's character of Owen. This is Chris Pratt's straightest leading role to date, and by that I mean he's just playing an action hero, a very charismatic action hero, but he is spared of a lot of the chucklehead goofball remarks that he had in Guardians of the Galaxy and the Lego Movie. At most, he has some douchey, sexist jokes, and he's kind of sarcastic, but that's it.
You want to consult here, or in my bungalow?
It's not funny.
A little funny.
Owen is studying and training the raptors, and for the most part has a good relationship with these 4 siblings of raptors, and it is one of the more intriguing storylines, but him as a singular character doesn't have a lot to go on, and doesn't have a lot of conflict with anyone else except for Vincent D'Onofrio's character. But outside of that, he's just there to look cool. And a lot of people have said, oh yeah, he's the main character, but he's not. Claire is the main character, which is one of the more complicated parts about this movie because she is a character that I equal parts love and loathe. Claire is the park's operations manager. She has a lot on her plate, especially now with introducing the Indominus Rex to shareholders, and she's a numbers-pushing busybody. But at the same time, you can view her as a very career-focused, strong woman, even to the point of pushing her family to the outskirts of her train of thought. She knows the park, inside and out, but she knows it from a very structured point of view, and I can kind of see that being the thing that audiences separate her as the protagonist of the movie. They don't see her as the main character, but I assure you, she is. Her nephews don't think of her as a responsible guardian, and Owen just thinks that she's very uptight, and that's why we should be rooting for her to actually grow as a character and kind of get out of that little shell that she's in. I've seen a lot of people come against Claire because that's all they think she is the shrill, nose-in-the-air, uptight girl. But she has the most character arc in the whole movie. Out of all the characters, she grows the most. But in that regard, I kind of feel like Bryce Dallas Howard overplays the character somewhat. In an interview, she said that she wanted Claire to keep her heels on for the entire movie, and I'm sorry, that is just not realistic at all. And I get it, she thinks it's a metaphorical statement of Claire's strength, but it's a break in reality for audience members. Bryce Dallas Howard did a fine job of playing Claire and making her into a fully realized character. But when you liken her to Beyonce, that's bold to say the least. So Claire is the character who grows the most in Jurassic World, but there was one thing I couldn't help was holding her back. The random romantic subplot between Owen and her, where, we know they went on a date at some point, but then whenever she saves Owen by shooting the Dimorphodon and then he gets up and kisses her, I was just like, no! I get what you're doing there, Trevorrow. You're trying to subvert the whole damsel in distress thing, but what you're actually doing is making the gender politics in your movie even more confused than they already are. In Jurassic Park, the romantic subplot was extremely subtle. It was one of the more subtle subplots of the movie between Alan and Ellie. We get it, they're together. He mentions it at one point, and we see them hold hands at least once. They're two characters who care about one another greatly, so much so that we never actually have to see them kiss whenever one of them saves the other. So I'm done talking about the main characters. I want to talk about the more supporting cast, like Irfan Khan playing Simon Masrani. I really liked this character. He was kind of the Neo John Hammond, but with a lot less character development. But I was fine with that. He was just happy and stupid wealthy. I also really appreciated that he genuinely seemed to care about how the park visitors were feeling and if the dinosaurs were happy or not. And he had that great line where he was like, you can see it in their eyes. But there's also a darker side to the character, where he doesn't want to compromise the very expensive life of the Indominus Rex for the lives of the park goers, which is in direct contrast to what you were just saying 20 minutes ago, dude. And then there's Vincent D'Onofrio's character, Vic Hoskins, who plays sort of the militant in this movie. Every Jurassic Park movie has a militant character, and he wants to weaponize the raptors for actual real-world combat usage, which is possibly one of the dumber storylines in the movie. On one hand, there's no way that this would ever be practical in any way, shape, or form. But on the other hand, I can kind of imagine with how these movies have progressed, this being the next obvious route to take with the Raptors. The whole notion of evil guy tries to weaponize something scientific just feels cliche at this point. And the fact that Hoskins has no real character complex outside of that one little conversation he had about the wolf pup, he's an unnecessary character, one of a few in this movie. And even though this next character is one of those unnecessaries, I really enjoyed Jake Johnson as Lowry in this movie. He's the control room operator and the comic relief of this movie, which is greatly needed. He's the one making the meta wisecracks about why the Indominus Rex is just a ridiculous creation all around. And the part where he tries to heroically kiss his coworker and she's like, oh, no, I have a boyfriend. Hilarious. But I suppose it's time to talk about this movie's most important character, the Indominus Rex. For it is without the Indominus Rex, this movie would not exist. He is the antagonist of the movie. But what made him so much more dynamic as a villain was the fact that he could use his immense genealogy to do whatever he wanted, basically. First, he can detect thermal radiation. Then he can hide his body heat. And then he can camouflage? I was just waiting for this guy to sprout wings and fucking fly away. But seriously, let's be real. Indominus Rex is basically Predator. What I loved the most about the Indominus Rex, though, was the terror it represented. You didn't even need to see him chomping down on people. It was the fact that you knew he was making a beeline towards the main strip of the park. Narratively, you don't want to see the bloodbath this creature would bring on a huge crowd of people, and that's why the pterodactyl sequence works so well. Believe it or not, it is the only sequence that fully utilizes the open park element of the movie. Having all of these pteranodons and dimorphodons raining hell from above is an extension of the Indominus Rex's terror. But is the Indominus Rex too smart for Jurassic World's own good? I'm gonna let you guys answer that one in the comments below. I genuinely believe that Jurassic Park was lightning in a bottle. There will never be another movie like it. At least I can't imagine there being another movie like it. And Jurassic World never reaches for those heights. On one hand, it doesn't try to be Jurassic Park. Yes, there are numerous callbacks to the first movie, but honestly, I feel like this movie has completely different aspirations than Jurassic Park ever did. However, Jurassic World also holds Jurassic Park up on a pedestal. All the while, it's just looking at it being like, wow, I'm never gonna be you. And it's simply just kind of frustrating to watch. But when I look back on Jurassic World, a lot of the negatives just fall by the wayside. It's a genuinely entertaining movie. It has a great cast and a lot of wow factor. Yeah, it uses way too much CGI, but there's the one scene with animatronics with the Apatosaurus on its last leg, and that scene really had an effect on me. I look at it this way. There's a target. It represents Jurassic Park. And Jurassic World is the archer, pulling back, aiming, and it shoots. And the arrow flies right past the target, misses it completely. And everyone is so disappointed, like, oh, we could have had this great thing all over again. But it turns out the arrow hit another target off in the distance that nobody bothered to pay attention to. And that's what I think Jurassic World is. It's its own movie. And whether or not you like that movie is up to you. Me? I'm gonna give Jurassic World a respectable 6 out of 10. Also, as a footnote, I should mention I really loved Michael Giacchino's score for this film. He brought back John Williams' old themes so nicely, but also made a new sound all his own. Thank you guys so much for watching this video review. I know I don't do them a lot anymore, but Jurassic World was a movie I just felt I had a lot to say about. And if y'all have already seen Jurassic World and you sat through this review, I appreciate you even more just because you want to listen to my opinion, and I appreciate that a lot. If you're new to the channel and like the content, please subscribe. Also, like The Film Feast on Facebook if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter at The Film Feast. I also have a Letterboxd page where you can follow all of the movies that I watch, as well as read some of the little short reviews I do. But that's it for now. I hope you guys can make some time to go to the theater and enjoy Colin Trevorrow's Jurassic World.